लड्डू खा लेंगे लड्डू। पार्टी करेंगे करेंगे। नहीं नहीं। है समोसा। हाँ हाँ, समोसा समोसा। एक धीमे धीमे सब करेंगे सब करेंगे, पहले भी पढ़ लेते हैं, नेक्स्ट क्लास में करते हैं। तो so while we were talking about I think IR में most of the topics have been done. एक दो one of the things that I had to discuss with you was West Asia, look west, है ना? So look west is what we're going to discuss about, and हाँ जी, Indian diaspora as well, Indian diaspora as well. So first we'll do look west and then we'll talk about the Indian diaspora वाला aspect. तो टुडे एंड टुमारो आई विल टेक क्लास, और ये लुक वेस्ट, इंडियन डायस्पोरा, जो भी और कुछ है ये सब खत्म कर कर आके योर आईआर कम्स टू मोर और लेस एन एंड। ठीक है, बाकी और देयर मे स्टिल बी थिंग्स इन आईआर विच विल कीप कमिंग अप, ओके, एंड दैट इज समथिंग दैट विल बी टॉकिंग अबाउट इन करंट अफेयर्स। तो करंट अफेयर्स का आप लोगों के लिए we'll be starting offline current affairs classes in the month of May, Saturdays and Sundays. So for example, there will be many other things on current affairs May where we'll be talking about IR also, because IR related चीजें current में आती रहती हैं. So we'll be covering there. But by and large, most of your IR oriented static things we are covering here. For example, UNSC reform है, UN Security Council reform, वो आगे कभी ना कभी कोई मीटिंग आएगी जहां पे it will come, we'll be covering it in current affairs. But most of the static things आज या कल में will finish up. Now talking about West Asia, तो वेस्ट एशिया का मैप के बारे में हम पहले ही बात कर चुके हैं, राइट? सो जो आपके एग्जाम ओरिएंटेड जो वेस्ट एशिया का कवरेज है उसमें जहां से आप लोगों को क्वेश्चन आ सकता है, व्हाट ऑल द ब्रॉड एरियाज यू शुड कवर इन लुक वेस्ट पॉलिसी इज दैट एक तो डायरेक्ट क्वेश्चन पहले भी आया हुआ है एंड इट कैन कम इन द फ्यूचर एज वेल ऑन व्हाट आर द की ऑब्जेक्टिव्स एंड key objectives of India's look west policy and its significance, and key objectives, its significant and associated challenges. Key objectives, its significance and its associated challenges. अब इसके अंदर look west के अंदर questions in the past have come in the mains examination on India Iran, India Israel. इस पे क्वेश्चंस आए हुए हैं, तो हमें इंडिया ईरान एंड इंडिया इजराइल, दीज टू, इन दोनों के बारे में भी पढ़ना है एट अ ब्रॉडर कंट्री लेवल. नाउ इंडिया ईरान and India Israel relationship, and when we again are talking about these two countries, what we are looking at is primarily again the significance and what are possibly the challenges and the ways of addressing them. India Iran, India Israel. Apart from this, इसी के associated Israel has signed what are the so-called Abraham Accords for normalization of ties with UAE, then even Oman, even other North African countries like Morocco, Egypt, etc. also. So how does the Abraham Accords influence India's engagement with Israel or West Asia, that is something that we have to talk about. ठीक. So the Abraham Accords is something that we have to talk about, and how does that influence India's relations with West Asian countries? That's one. The other thing has been the recently announced, what recently, it's been more than a year now, the China Iran $400 billion worth strategic partnership agreement. These are the major, and how does obviously this influence India's Iran relationship? देखिए, whichever major developments happen in a region, how does that influence India or Indian foreign policy or its objectives? यही पढ़ना है हमें, right? So if you see, this is what we've always been saying. Whatever, for example, if you remember, मैंने आपको शुरू में जब पढ़ा रहा था, तो I told you that USA has a first island chain strategy, second island chain strategy. Now you would have seen recently that China has gone ahead and signed a security pact with Solomon Islands. Solomon Islands is close to Guam. मैंने तब भी गुआम की बात की थी, है ना? तो while events keep happening, अगर आपको broad picture पता है, then you know why that becomes important. तो यही, and how does that become significant for India? There have been 2 editorials in the last 1 week on this on China's entry into Solomon Islands. That what China is trying to do is build overseas naval bases. Now, while that is a concern for many of the countries in South China Sea or Australia, etc., sooner or later, China will look at certain such steps, say maybe in Maldives in the future, in Sri Lanka, in Pakistan, it is already there in Djibouti, so or in Cambodia. So in also, आपको बस context समझना है, and how, what does it imply for India. इतना ही अगर आप कर रहे हैं, that is more than enough. तो again वेस्ट एशिया में भी ये 3-4 चीजें. Let's go quickly. I'll give you a handout for this also. उसको एक आध दिन लग सकता है, but I'll give you a handout for West Asia, including this India, Iran, Israel, or the $400 billion partnership agreement and its implications. इसमें let's start with India, the West Asia or Look West policy. देखिए, the Look West policy's major significance, or should I say objectives, should be amply clear to you. In the sense that when we talk about these objectives of India's Look West policies, the first set of objectives relate to economic dimension of the relationship, particularly relating to energy security. There is also another economic dimension which is related to the incoming remittances from the Indian diaspora working where? In West Asia. These are the economic aspects, and I'll get into the details of each of this. The incoming remittances from the Indian diaspora which is working in West Asia, whether that is in Saudi Arabia or in UAE and many other, Oman also. So firstly, there is a huge significance of the India's West Asian policy because of these aspects. Okay. Apart from this economic significance, there is a significance in terms of security cooperation also. And that security cooperation is when you look at a Saudi Arabia or Iran. they sit where? They sit across the major shipping routes. Firstly, Saudi Arabia, Iran themselves give a huge portion of oil, but they also sit across the major shipping routes, whether that's the Strait of Hormuz or the Red Sea region, right? The Persian Gulf, the Strait of Hormuz. So they themselves have a major role to play in maritime security in the Arabian Sea or the Indian Ocean region. So maritime cooperation is one area where cooperation will come into picture with whom? Saudi Arabia or even partly Iran. But in security cooperation, there is one major country also, apart from Saudi Arabia and Iran, is Israel. And that is cooperation in the defense sector. So security is also going to be an important area of cooperation between India and a number of West Asian countries. So when we talk about security cooperation, it is maritime security, whether in the Persian Gulf or the Horn of Africa region. Then, apart from this maritime security, the cooperation in the defense sector or defense cooperation. Defense cooperation in the India-Israel relationship, where Israel has been a supplier of unmanned aerial vehicles or drones. It is also an important supplier of radar systems such as the Falcon radar systems. It is also an important supplier for artillery, or even in guns, etc. also, and even training and cooperation in counter-terrorism and intelligence. So Israel also is an important security partner. One thing which is well known in India's security circles and has been that India-Israel defense cooperation actually picked up in a major way when, by the way, India is Israel's top defense partner, meaning India's at times has been consistently the biggest export market for Israel's defense sector. Okay, so from Israel's viewpoint, India is an important market for its defense manufactured goods. Okay, now the India-Israel defense cooperation actually picked up in a major way after which war? The Kargil war. So the story goes like this, that during the Kargil war, India, see, we are unique in our own ways, and one of the things was that during the Kargil war, India fell short of one thing. So we had the Bofors gun, and see, the Kargil was where the Indian soldiers were on a lower position, whereas the Pakistani troops were sitting on mountain on the top of these mountains in the Ladakh range and Kargil range, etc. And so basically from below or from the foothills of the mountain to climb up the mountain, basically we required heavy artillery coverage, and that is where the Bofors gun was a very important weapon of our artillery tool for fighting against or for fighting during the Kargil war. But a couple of days into the war, India was facing shortage of artillery for the Bofors gun. मतलब गन थी लेकिन गोला नहीं था. है ना, लाइक नहीं है तो अब क्या करें टाइप. सो इंडिया डिड नॉट हैव एनी मेजर व्हाट डिफेंस कोऑपरेशन अग्रीमेंट और military purchase agreement with Israel. And despite not having any such agreement, Israel agreed to supply artillery for the Bofors on an immediate basis, okay, without any prior agreement also. And thus, the immediate cooperation that Israel extended to India became very valuable for India's military response during the Kargil war. And from then on, the India-Israel military or defense cooperation has actually grown substantially. Okay, to the extent from not having any trade in defense sector with India up till the Kargil war, today for Israel, India is the top export market for its defense goods. India has other major defense partners also like the United States and Russia. And after that comes Israel. But so is India a big market for Israel's defense platforms. So even in the defense or in the security area, there is substantial reason for cooperation. In counter-terrorism also, there is substantial reason for cooperation, where Israel is also important and Saudi Arabia is also important. Though utna news mein nahi aata hai, but for example, in the past, Saudi Arabia has handed over a certain number of operatives of the Indian Mujahideen who have operated from Saudi Arabia to India. Okay, and so Saudi Arabia has also extended a substantial cooperation in counter-terrorism and intelligence sharing with India. So there is the defense as well as what the defense security and the economics पे तो हम आ ही जाएंगे अभी. Okay, so apart from defense and economics, the third area is what? The strategic importance. The strategic importance also emanates from the importance of whom? Iran being a gateway to Central Asia and Afghanistan. So if one was to add the third major dimension to this, it would be in the area of what? It would be in the area of the strategic importance of connectivity to whom? Central Asia through initiatives like the International North-South Transport Corridor, मैं बता चुका हूं उसके बारे में आपको पहले, and also through Chabahar port into where? Afghanistan. Chabahar and the Dilaram Zaranj highway into Afghanistan. So these are the reasons why West Asia continues to be an important reason. Now let me elaborate on the economics of it, because the economics is the most important thing here in the India-West Asia relationship. And the economics is primarily driven by what? Oil. Right? देखिए बड़ा चलिए छोड़, देखिए जब बॉयकॉट की बात हो रही है तो आई थिंक वी शुड बॉयकॉट ऑल ऑयल कमिंग फ्रॉम वेस्ट एशिया ऑल्सो, है ना. तो बट वो नहीं हो सकता, बस बाकी चलिए नहीं बात फालतू. इकोनॉमिक्स, एनर्जी सिक्योरिटी. ना एनर्जी सिक्योरिटी पे एक बार क्वेश्चन पहले भी आ चुका है आपके मेंस में, एंड इट वाज I think the question came in 2017 or 18 about discuss the key objectives of India's or discuss the key concerns and challenges with respect to achieving energy security and the role of foreign policy in achieving energy security. तो एनर्जी सिक्योरिटी पे क्वेश्चंस आपको और भी जगह आ सकते हैं. कल आई थिंक आपके हिंदू में एक वो एडिटोरियल आया था ना, कुछ वो था कुछ ऑन संडे कि हाउ फास्ट कैन इंडिया मूव अवे फ्रॉम कोल, है ना. तो एनर्जी सिक्योरिटी पे पेपर 3 इकोनॉमिक्स में भी क्वेश्चन आ सकता है. इन्वायरमेंट में रिन्यूएबल एनर्जी एंड एनर्जी सिक्योरिटी पे भी क्वेश्चन आ सकता है. GS पेपर 2 में एनर्जी सिक्योरिटी एंड हाउ डज फॉरेन एनर्जी सिक्योरिटी एंड हाउ डज इंडियन फॉरेन पॉलिसी कैन प्ले एन इंपॉर्टेंट रोल इन अचीविंग एनर्जी सिक्योरिटी, इस पे भी क्वेश्चन आ सकता है। तो इसके लिए सबसे पहले तो इंपॉर्टेंट है हम यही डिफाइन कर लें, व्हाट इज एनर्जी सिक्योरिटी। तो व्हाट इज एनर्जी सिक्योरिटी, क्या है एनर्जी सिक्योरिटी? इफ यू वर टू डिफाइन सिंपल अपने शब्दों में, व्हाट इज एनर्जी सिक्योरिटी, एनीबॉडी? इनफ अवेलेबिलिटी ऑफ इनफ एनर्जी टू मीट योर इंडस्ट्रियल और हाउस होल्ड डिमांड्स। तो एक तो हो गया एनर्जी सिक्योरिटी का एक डायमेंशन है अवेलेबिलिटी ऑफ व्हाट, इनफ और अवेलेबिलिटी ऑफ इनफ सोर्सेस टू प्रोवाइड एनर्जी। तो सिक्योरिटी का एक डायमेंशन है अवेलेबिलिटी, एक और डायमेंशन होगा विच इज रिलेटेड टू अवेलेबिलिटी इज द डायमेंशन ऑफ रिलायबिलिटी। द सोर्स इज अवेलेबल बट दैट सोर्स मस्ट ऑल्सो बी रिलायबल। ऐसा नहीं है कि आज आ रहा है कल पता चला इट इज नॉट देयर। सो अवेलेबिलिटी एज वेल एज reliability, but there is another dimension to security. अवेलेबिलिटी और रिलायबिलिटी तो ठीक है, तीसरा भी है क्या? अफोर्डेबिलिटी और कॉस्ट। अवेलेबिलिटी, रिलायबिलिटी, अफोर्डेबिलिटी और कॉस्ट। इट मस्ट नॉट कम एट अ कॉस्ट कि फिर लोग देखना ही बंद कर दें कि अब कितने का पेट्रोल है ना, कि आज जो मिल रहा है कल जो मिलेगा उससे तो आज सस्ता ही है। कि पेट्रोल नाउ हैज गॉन ऑन अ रेट कि अब आज 120 है तो खुश होना चाहिए, आज 120 है, आज भरा लो कल 122 ही होगा, है ना। तो वन मस्ट लुक एट द पॉजिटिव साइड ऑफ थिंग्स, वो अलग चीज है, बट यू वांट द सोर्स टू बी अफोर्डेबल एज वेल, बिकॉज अदरवाइज if the cost of fuel becomes very high, it will hurt your industries, it will hurt your economic growth, it will cause inflation. So affordability, reliability and availability, ये तो हो गए तीन डायमेंशन। एक और चौथा डायमेंशन ओवर टाइम which has emerged for energy security point of view is that energy security must be attained in a carbon neutral manner if possible, or in a climate sensitive manner. Meaning, while you're looking to achieve energy security, it must be done in a climate sensitive manner, meaning increasing the push of what? Renewable energy in your energy mix. तो ये 3 या 4 मेजर डायमेंशंस हैं एनर्जी सिक्योरिटी के। तो हाँ, so what, so one could say these are the major objectives that any policy which looks to achieve energy security must look to fulfill. यही 3 या 4 डायमेंशन है। सो एंड हाउ डज वेस्ट एशिया फिट इनटू द पिक्चर, उस पे पहले आने से पहले वी शुड नो सो अबाउट एनर्जी सिक्योरिटी। सो इन एनर्जी सिक्योरिटी वी आर लुकिंग एट अवेलेबिलिटी, वी आर लुकिंग एट रिलायबिलिटी। देखिए थोड़ा ध्यान से सुन लीजिए, कहीं और मिलेगा नहीं, इन द सेंस कि कोई एक मोस्ट जगहों पे एक साथ नहीं आता है, टुकड़ों टुकड़ों में आता है, तो आई एम पुटिंग दैट टुगेदर। अवेलेबिलिटी, रिलायबिलिटी, अफोर्डेबिलिटी, and as I said, a climate sensitive method of attaining energy सिक्योरिटी। ठीक है, ये 3 या 4 फाउंडेशनल प्रिंसिपल्स हैं। अवेलेबिलिटी मस्ट बी in sufficient amount and must have a uninterrupted and predictable supply. So, from energy security point of view, looking at availability and reliability, we often say, is West Asia an important source? Yes. Both in terms of being able to meet India's energy demands and meeting them in an uninterrupted and a predictable manner. West Asia is the primary driver of India's energy security. Okay. So, to the extent that almost 70% and even more of India's energy, पहली बात why एक तो ये है, एक देखिए अगर मैं एनर्जी सिक्योरिटी की भी सिग्निफिकेंस में चला जाऊं तो बहुत है. फर्स्टली फॉर इंडिया एनर्जी सिक्योरिटी, अचीविंग एनर्जी सिक्योरिटी is crucially dependent on foreign policy. Why? Because most of our oil and gas needs are made by imports and it is a inelastic demand. ऐसा यानी कि इसको कम कर दिया, right? So we have a huge import dependence for energy. So foreign policy is bound to play an important role. Okay. अगर आप हिस्ट्री में जाएं, there are examples of how to achieve energy security. Countries went towards colonizing other countries. One of the classic examples within Asia is of Japan. देखिए, Japan is a group of islands, right? Japan has huge dependence on oil imports. It doesn't have any major sources of oil. Yet Japan, when underwent industrial revolution, did set up a large number of its industries between World War I and II. As its industries increased, Japan's requirement for energy increased. And as its requirement for energy increased, it looked towards colonizing other countries which could provide it coal or fuel or other sources of oil. So to meet energy security needs, manufacturing economies often look at what? Having what? This availability and reliability. And for availability and reliability, for example, Japan looked towards colonizing countries. For example, abhi main detail mein nahi ja raha hu, but that has happened. For example, Japan colonized China and the eastern coast of China, including the mineral-rich region of Manchuria. क्योंकि मंचूरिया में मंचूरियन नहीं है, मंचूरिया है. And Manchuria is not Mongolia. It's a region. Mongolia is a country. So in the Manchuria region, China colonized and captured the mines in the Manchuria region on the eastern side of China because it could provide them surplus amount of or abundant amount of coal which was required for electricity for its industries. So इसीलिए एनर्जी सिक्योरिटी के लिए is extremely important and foreign policy plays an important role in achieving energy security for countries with high import dependence. Does India have high import dependence? Yes, for energy. To the tune, India has high import dependence for energy to the tune that 70 to 80% of India's oil supply is imported. देखिए, अगर मैं इसमें भी और बेसिक्स में चला जाऊं, कोल है एक मेजर सप्लायर ऑफ एनर्जी इनटू इंडिया. थर्मल पावर प्लांट्स ये कॉन्स्टिट्यूट करता है समथिंग अराउंड 55 to 60% ऑफ इंस्टॉल्ड कैपेसिटी. इंस्टॉल्ड कैपेसिटी अलग चीज है और एक्चुअल पावर जनरेशन अलग चीज है. इंस्टॉल्ड कैपेसिटी का 55-60% इज कमिंग फ्रॉम कोल. देन कम्स अदर fossil fuels like oil and gas, and they are useful for automobiles also and for other purposes as well. Transport sector के लिए coal cannot really work for what? The transport sector. That will depend on oil and gas. And oil and gas का 70 to 80% of that India imports. We don't have much of our own domestic oil and gas production. Coal का production तो है हमारा. So domestic coal production is substantial, but oil and gas production is not there. So in oil and gas we have import dependence, and 70% of India's oil and gas is imported from whom? From West Asia. Countries like Saudi Arabia is the first, or one could say the top supplier of what? Oil to India. Countries like Oman are important suppliers of what? LNG, or liquefied natural gas to India. Countries like Iran are today lagging behind. At a certain time, Iran was the second biggest supplier of oil to India. Today, it is the 9th or 10th supplier. Because of US sanctions, Iran has gone down the list. But Iran has the potential to meet a large portion of India's oil and gas needs. Okay. So Iran is also an important supplier. बाकी तो है ही हैं. By the way, we right now also, and up till Saddam Hussein was there, Iraq was also one of the top 3 oil suppliers to whom? India. So while तो एक चीज तो ये है, there is a huge import dependence on whom? West Asia for India's energy security. However, the opposite is also true. What is the opposite? That West Asian countries today have their biggest market for oil and gas in Asia, particularly India and China. China is the world's fastest growing economy, and so is India, one of the large growing economies. They are the ones which are willing to buy the oil and gas of West Asian countries in huge amount. देखिए, up till early 2000s and even up till 2010, West Asian countries were selling oil and gas in substantial amount to whom? Europe, and more importantly USA. But after 2010, their exports to USA have declined. Why? Because of production of shale gas. As USA started producing shale gas, it has now become an energy surplus country. It need not buy. In fact, USA is now selling gas to other countries. So USA, which was earlier a big market for Saudi oil, etc., is no longer a big market. Second, Europe has also started shifting away from fossil fuels towards relatively cleaner fuels. Okay. So because of this, while India has a big dependence on West Asia has also started becoming more dependent on China and India, which means there is enough reason for building interdependence between the two. I hope this point is clear. Now, so here basically, thus from India's objective, or thus with reference to India's objective of attaining energy security, the role of West Asia is vital, given that more than 70% of its oil and gas supply comes from this what region, comes from this region. तो अभी मैं वेस्ट एशिया पे बात कर रहा हूं, तो अभी बस इतनी बात कर रहा हूं एनर्जी सिक्योरिटी के लिए. आई विल कम बैक टू दिस एनर्जी सिक्योरिटी राइट नाउ अगेन. West Asia is also important apart from this oil and gas, also in economic terms, apart from energy security. West Asia is also important for what? Remittances and also the welfare of the Indian diaspora, which is in West Asia. To give you this context, the size of Indian diaspora in West Asia is roughly 8 million. There are 8 million Indian what? देखिए अब इसके आगे मैं कुछ बोलूंगा तो फिर 8 million Indian workers where? Workers in West Asia. Out of them 3 million are in roughly in UAE or Dubai. UAE में मतलब दुबई, शारजाह, whatever. Roughly 3 million are in Saudi Arabia. And the rest are in Oman, Qatar, elsewhere distributed. But there is no major Indian diaspora as of now in Iran or in Syria, okay, or in Turkey. But these are major destinations for Indian workers. Yemen में भी थे. Then the Yemeni conflict happened and so a large number of workers came back from there. So firstly, there is roughly some total of 8 million workers, and this is the breakup briefly. Now, these 8 million workers roughly send 40 to 45 billion US dollars of remittances per year, and thus constitute almost 50% of India's inward what? Remittances. %50 of India's what? Inward remittances. देखिए एक चीज समझ लीजिए. Indian diaspora which is working abroad often sends back money, right, back to India. This is often in the tune of 85 to 90 billion dollars per year. And this amount of money comes from West Asia, North America, if I was to say, which includes USA and Canada, and from Europe. और इसका ब्रेकअप कुछ ऐसा है that 45-50 billion dollars come from this region and some 45 billion dollars come from West Asia. एक और डिफरेंस है. So firstly, this is a huge amount of money because it adds to India's what? It adds to India's GDP. That's okay. It adds to India's foreign exchange reserve. And वो balance of payment जो है, देखिए अभी तो क्या है ना, अभी तो पार्टी शुरू हुई है ना, तो अभी 120 है, तो it's about whether it's 110, 120, 30, 40, 50 जहां भी जाए, but we are not paying it in terms of rupee, we are paying it in terms of dollars. And for that, it's extremely important that we must have a constant flow of dollars incoming into India. Now, that incoming of dollars into India happens when India exports goods more than it imports, right? Now, we can't cut down on our imports very much because energy imports so is important. So, the incoming of dollars into India, a valuable source is remittances. Without these remittances coming every year to India, it would be an exaggeration. I'm already telling. It would be an exaggeration to say that without these remittances coming to India year on year, India will become a Sri Lanka. ऐसा नहीं होने वाला है. But these remittances, when they keep coming in regularly, it's a huge cushion for the economy. In fact, these remittances are something जो because of this, there have been times in the Indian economy where these remittances kept the balance of payment on the positive front. Without it, it would have gone negative. और वो टाइम आ जाएगा अभी. एक साल रुकिए आप. Because this inflation is going nowhere. है ना? वो यूक्रेन वहां लड़ना छोड़ने वड़ने वाले हैं नहीं. छोड़ भी दिया तो भी 6 महीने. US is, even if that war stops tomorrow, the sanctions are not going away anywhere for a long time. If the sanctions are not going anywhere for the long time and tensions are going to be there, you will see that the prices will continue to remain high. Okay. So these remittances are a valuable source of macroeconomic stability for India. That's one. Secondly, the reason why it is also important is that a large number of Indians are finding employment where? In West Asia. और एक चीज जो मैंने नहीं बताई है, वेस्ट एशिया में out of these 80 lakh people, 8 million is roughly 80 lakh, there are people who are involved in the blue collared sector also, in construction sector also, not just, it's not they are only involved in IT. क्योंकि US and North America में it's only high skilled workers, whereas in West Asia workers go from India belonging to all social classes. Okay, so employment is also there. More importantly, if Saudi Arabia and Iran go to war with each other, it's a big nightmare for India. Suppose Iran bombs Saudi Arabia and Saudi Arabia bombs Iran. There are 30 lakh Indians who are working in Saudi Arabia. They will have to be rescued or quote unquote evacuated from Saudi Arabia. We had to do this in case of Yemen, which had some 1 lakh 1,25,000, 30,000. But if 30 lakh people have to be evacuated, it is going to be a nightmare for any government in India to possibly evacuate such a large number of workers. एक तो वो होगा. Secondly, Saudi Arabia and Iran go to war with each other, the oil price will go higher and higher. So, because of this, stability in West Asia is important, and good relations with West Asian countries are also important, not just because of oil, but also because of the fact that a large number of Indians are working in West Asia. Their safety, ensuring their safety requires good relations between India and West Asian countries as well. Okay, apart from the fact that they are also sending back remittances. So that is why the economic angle in the India-West Asia relationship is extremely important. To give you a measure, India-West Asia bilateral annual trade is more than 200 billion US dollars. ASEAN की हमने बात करी थी, right? I told you ASEAN is around 80 billion US dollars, 80 to 90 billion. Whereas with West Asia, it is more than 200 billion US dollars. So you see, economic angle of the India-West Asia relationship is a very important angle. Okay, so you see that given the 8 million strong Indian diaspora in West Asia ensuring political stability in West Asia, ensuring what? Political stability in West Asia and ensuring political stability in West Asia is critical to secure the life and livelihood of Indian workers in the what? Indian workers in the region. So, because of this reason, the economic angle and the India West Asia bilateral trade is more than $200 billion per year, and thus signifies a mature relationship between the two, and thus signifies a strong or mature relationship between the two. So ye is about what? The key, if I was to say significance or the importance of India West Asia relationship. अब if I was to come back to energy security की मैंने बात करी थी ना, तो देखिए इंडिया की एनर्जी सिक्योरिटी एंड हाउ डज फॉरेन पॉलिसी एंड इंडियाज एनर्जी सिक्योरिटी ओवरलैप, मैं बहुत बेसिक लेवल पे आपको समझाता हूं, जिससे इफ यू एवर टू आंसर अ क्वेश्चन यू विल बी इन अ पोजीशन टू आंसर, और जिसमें आपकी सारी चीजें बैठ जाएंगी. टू अचीव एनर्जी सिक्योरिटी, the foreign policy is firstly looking at what? Doing what? Diversifying energy or oil and gas procurement where? Away from West Asia. A simple rule is you do not want to remain dependent on any one region for all your oil and energy needs, nor do you want to remain dependent on any one country in a region. So we are trying to diversify both within West Asia and away from West Asia. Because why do you want to diversify? Because if tomorrow, as I told, that Saudi Arabia and Iran go to war with each other, तो हो गया इंडिया का. India must have in its foreign policy alternative sources of supply available, so that if there is a conflict in the region, our supplies are not disrupted. Okay, so diversifying away from West Asia in Indian foreign policy for energy security is looking at which regions? Africa and Latin America, but more so as of now Africa. Almost 20% of India's oil imports today are coming from Africa. In Africa, for example, we are looking at countries like Sudan and South Sudan, Sudan and South Sudan both. Countries like Mozambique, oil and gas procurement. India is also looking towards whom? South America or Latin American countries, where it is looking at Venezuela or other countries in the region also. It is also looking towards whom? USA. Increasingly, India is procuring and entering into long-term contracts to procure LNG from whom? United States. Next, India is also looking at whom? Russia. Joint exploration, production to purchasing of oil from Russia. So, energy security point of view, first thing that we want to do is diversify and ensure that India does not remain overly dependent on only one country or one region. That's one thing that we are trying to do from energy security point of view. Secondly, there as a part of attaining energy security or with the objective of attaining energy security, India also wants to increase what? The role of renewable energy in its energy mix. Does the foreign policy come into picture anywhere there? Yes, it comes into picture there as well. Where, for example, India intends to work with whom? Which country? France, under what is called as the International Solar Alliance. So, through initiatives such as the International Solar Alliance, India wants to work with France primarily to achieve energy security both for India and what? Ensure that India becomes a leader in the renewable energy sector, that we can provide solar panels to technical know-how for setting up wind energy plants or solar energy plants, where? In Africa or in other countries. So, diversifying energy procurement away from West Asia, diversifying towards increasing the role of what? Diversifying towards increasing the role of renewable energy in India's what? And cooperation with like-minded partners on the same, or cooperation with, and looks towards cooperation with, for example, France, under the International Solar Alliance. For boosting the production of solar energy or solar electricity. तो ये एक ब्रॉड एंगल है, what role who can play foreign policy towards meeting energy security है, इसमें भी और dimensions, but I am not getting into it as of now, but this should also give you some broad sense of how does energy security and foreign policy overlap with each other. ठीक है, if these are the significance and objectives of India's look west policy, जो next चीज है, what are the major challenges in India's look west policy? So for realization of these objectives, what are the major challenges? That is what we have to look. Challenges for India's look west policy. कनेक्टिविटी कोई चैलेंज नहीं है. When we talk about challenges for India's look west policy, क्या लगता है आपको, क्या क्या challenges हो सकते हैं? China, Western sanctions, anything else? Social implications of remittances, instability. देखिए, सबसे पहले when we talk about challenges in India-West Asia relationship is the challenge of dealing with competing rivalries in West Asia. ठीक है, ये क्या है competing rivalries? देखिए, वेस्ट एशिया के 3 पिलर हैं, ऐसे समझ लीजिए, 3 या 4 मान लीजिए आप, जो भी. The 4 major players of West Asia: Turkey, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and Israel. Out of these, firstly, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey, all of them have a rivalry amongst each other, as all of them often proclaim that they are the leaders of West Asia. They are the leaders of Muslims and they are the leaders of West Asia. While in case of Iran and Saudi Arabia, this rivalry over leadership of West Asia also has a sectarian flavor to it. Sectarian flavor in the sense that Saudi Arabia predominantly led by a Sunni monarchy, whereas in Iran it is the Shia ruling elites, and also the majority population is Shia in case of Iran, and Sunni are the ruling elites in case of Saudi Arabia, and Sunni are also the majority population in Saudi Arabia. So there is a constant rivalry between the two. Turkey, on the other hand, considers itself to be a natural leader of West Asia, because Turkey is what was the nucleus of what was formerly known as the Ottoman Empire. So Turkey says we are the leaders of West Asia. Okay. So Turkey, but the Saudi-Iranian rivalry is a significantly strong rivalry. And apart from it, there is the rivalry between Israel and Iran, partly between Israel and Saudi Arabia also, partly between Israel and Turkey also, but definitely between Israel and Iran, and to some extent between Israel and Saudi Arabia, or to a significant extent between Israel and Saudi Arabia as well. The rivalry or antagonism between Israel and Saudi Arabia or Israel and Iran is over the question of Palestine. That all major West Asian countries support the existence of an independent Palestinian state. Whether it is Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Iran, Jordan, Syria, everybody supports the idea of an independent Palestinian state. However, in the history of West Asia, what we see is that initially many of these states, including Saudi Arabia and Iran, had opposed the creation of Israel. And eventually, even while Israel was created, Israel went about eroding the territories of Palestine and eventually refused to even recognize the right of Palestine to exist as an independent state. मोटी मोटी यही कहानी है, बाकी मैं बता दूंगा, बट मोटी मोटी यही कहानी है कि Israel never says that there must be no Palestine. However, in practice, Israel leaves no stone unturned to prevent the formation of an independent Palestinian state. So, on the question of Palestine or the right of Palestine to exist as an independent state, while Israel is opposed to it, Saudi Arabia, Iran, Turkey, all of them support it. Okay. And all of them say that it is under their leadership that Palestinians can have an independent state. Okay. So, simple bhasha mein, who is fighting for the freedom of Palestine? Saudi Arabia, Iran, Turkey, all of them? None of them. Answer is, जहां आपकी आजादी के लिए पूरी दुनिया लड़ने के लिए तैयार हो, आप समझ जाइए आपकी आजादी के लिए कोई नहीं लड़ने वाला है, आप ही को जो करना है कर ले. ठीक है. So while all of them claim to be the leaders of the Palestinian cause, none of them are in a position or in a position to what? None of them are solely in a position to challenge Israel, and the relationships between them are extremely complex. हमें उतनी complexity में जाने की जरूरत नहीं है. But we must be mindful of these rivalries. Why? Because India has to navigate these rivalries. Does India want strong relations with or good relations with Israel? Yes. Does India want good relations with Saudi Arabia? Yes. Does India want good relations with Iran? Yes. We want good relations with Iran because Iran can supply oil. Iran is important for Afghanistan. Iran is important for India's interest in Afghanistan and Central Asia, and also for oil. We want good relations with Saudi Arabia because Saudi Arabian oil and 3 million Indian workers in Saudi Arabia. We want good relations with Israel because of close defense and security partnership. So the challenge for India's West Asian relationships is firstly how to navigate these competing rivalries. It is as much as to say this, that if USA says we want good relations with India also, we want good relations with Pakistan also. है ना? So navigating these rivalries is the first primary challenge for India's West Asian engagement. India keeps telling to Saudi Arabia or to Iran or to Israel that our relationship with each of you has nothing to do with our relationship with third countries, nor do we intend to interfere in your relations with any other country. So India says India-Iran engagement is independent of India-Saudi engagement. Okay? But ये कहना एक चीज है और करना एक चीज है. If India buys Saudi oil but does not buy Iranian oil, then what are we telling to the Iranians? Directly or indirectly, we are telling to the Iranians, look, you are important, but for whatever reasons, we can't buy oil from you right now. We are going to buy from Saudi Arabia. If this situation persists for 1 month, 2 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, beyond a point, a time will come when Iran will say, it is clear, you prefer to have a closer relationship with whom? We cannot wait endlessly. Iran like, तुम्हारी दोस्ती उनसे तो हमारी दोस्ती चाइना से. Okay. So time will come where, so managing these competing relationships is a challenge. On the Israel question, on the other hand, the fact of the matter is Who is a close partner of Israel? The United States. India has good relations with United States. India has good relations with United States. US has good relations with Israel. So obviously there is more reason for India to have good relations with Israel. But USA also has, देखिए इन सबके ऊपर पिताजी कौन है? US, है ना? जहां जहां US वहां वहां हम, है ना? So if I was to add to it, because the second major challenge is US. देखिए USA has good relations with and Saudi Arabia. It has okay relations with Turkey. Turkey is a NATO ally, and USA has not so bad relations with Turkey. It has good relations with Israel and Saudi Arabia. But USA has a clear antagonism with whom? Iran, which has led to US sanctions on Iran. Now, this obviously complicates whose engagement with West Asia? India's. This complicates India's relations with West Asia because of the simple reason that it is the US sanctions which have largely hindered India-Iran relationship. And as it has hindered India-Iran relationship, it has resulted in a situation that Iran has partly, drawn the message that however much India may try, given India's deep engagement with whom? US, it is unlikely to antagonize US for close relations with Iran. The Iranian policy makers say that India's Qibla is in Washington. मैं नहीं बोल रहा हूं, वो बोल रहे हैं. ठीक, किबला क्या होता है छोड़ दीजिए. वो हम पूजा करते तो यूएसए की तरफ देख के कहते हैं, ऐसा ईरान वाले कहते हैं. ठीक है. That we have clearly stated directly or indirectly through a number of actions where our priorities are. India has a huge diaspora working in the United States. India has signed defense partnerships with United States. If not defense partnerships, Quad, this, that, etc. with the United States. India has a huge trading relationship with the United States. And in so many areas, India and the Americans are indulging in closer cooperation with whom? The United States. So that has been one of the biggest shadows on the India-Iran relationship. And while close relations with USA has helped whom? India-Israel relationship, it has hampered India-Iran relationship. So this is the second major challenge for India's West Asian engagement. तो ये ही जो हैं, if I was to say major challenges हैं, बाकी सब तो छोटा मोटा है, it can be worked out. Okay, so these are the two major challenges जो आपको broadly that you need to identify and basically deal with. ये जो third challenge है क्या? China. That China is actually not a challenge for India's West Asian engagement. Why? Because West Asian countries will be more than happy to sell oil to both India and China. बहुत oil है उनके पास. जिसने भी उनको दिया है oil, छप्पर फाड़ के दिया. They have enough oil to meet the economic needs of both India and China. However, the Chinese challenge is only an indirect challenge as Iran is facing whose sanctions? US sanctions. And US China trade tensions and rivalries have also grown. Iran is under US sanctions, so who's not buying Iranian oil? No one, predominantly amongst the major buyers, except whom? China. China is like, हम खरीद लेंगे, जो होगा देख लेंगे. After 2017, Iran, USA has started, after 2017, why 2017? I'll talk, Trump. After 2017, China has started buying oil from Iran in significant measure, despite US sanctions. This has been triggered by rising US-China tensions and USA again imposing sanctions on Iran. हम बात करेंगे. So China started buying oil from Iran after 2017 again despite sanctions, and eventually in 2021 it has gone ahead and signed a strategic partnership agreement where China will invest $400 billion in Iran in the oil sector to set up either oil refineries or oil pipelines or buy oil from Iran in larger measure for meeting its own energy needs. So while neither USA is a market for Iranian oil, neither USA's sanctions are allowing India to buy oil, who is thus, and thus because of these reasons Iran has little choice but to tilt towards whom? China. Okay, and that may not be good news for India. However, India doesn't have probably the space to actually go ahead and do what China is doing with respect to Iran. Because for India, now some of you may be saying, may think, matlab Indian foreign policy is dictated by whom? USA. That USA ने बोल दिया ईरान से ऑयल नहीं खरीदना है, so we are not, meaning India's foreign policy is being dictated by USA. I am not saying anything of that sort. Please understand, India's, as of now, एक बार बार ये बोला जाता है कि oil, you know, when it comes to oil, when India stopped buying oil from Iran, whom did it start buying more oil from? Saudi Arabia. बोला ना, Saudi has good relations with US. India started buying more and more oil from whom? Saudi Arabia. So partly from Indian foreign policy makers' point of view, there are many suppliers of oil and we can live without Iranian oil also. Okay. So from that point of view, India has shown the view or the willingness to probably diversify away from Iran. But if India-Iran relationship would have been simply about buying and supplying oil, India could have ignored Iran. But given the strategic angle of connectivity to Central Asia, Afghanistan, stability in this region, Iran is important more than oil. Okay. So yes, as of now, some of those long-term objectives are being compromised upon or are being probably not being addressed in the light of the India-US relationship. But that doesn't mean that India's foreign policy is dictated by Washington. इसके एग्जाम्पल आपको देखने मिल ही रहे हैं, है ना. देखा S-400 तो हम खरीदेंगे, है ना, चाहे तुम जो हो तेल तो हम खरीदेंगे, है ना. So it's not that Indian policy is dictated by Washington, though it would be an assumption that many would, it would be a lazy assumption अगर भाई बार बार जयशंकर जी की भाषा में बात की जाए तो, कि just because on some issues we are keeping US pressure or concerns in mind, that doesn't mean that our policy is completely dictated by the United States. So these are the major concerns. ये समझ गए आप? तो एक दो पॉइंट लिख लीजिए, है ना, ताकि आप सोए नहीं. Afternoon time is the time when everybody wants to sleep. I am तो here since 8 a.m. in the morning. उसके लिए I had to get up at 7. सोचिए 8 a.m. I had a class then now, और उसके बीच में कुछ ना कुछ और. So you can write down. देखिए लोग कई कलरफुल फ्रेजेस लिखते हैं इसके बारे में, दैट वेस्ट एशिया इज नॉट जस्ट अ गैस स्टेशन फॉर इंडिया. ऐसा क्वेश्चन आएगा नहीं आपको, लेकिन लोग ऐसे फ्रेजेस लिखते हैं कि वेस्ट एशिया इज नॉट मेरली अ गैस स्टेशन फॉर इंडिया, कि बस वहां से तेल आ रहा है इसीलिए वेस्ट एशिया इंपॉर्टेंट है. इट इज इंपॉर्टेंट फॉर अ वेराइटी ऑफ अदर रीजंस एज वेल. अभी मोस्ट इंडियंस के दिमाग में, माइंडसेट में तो यही है कि इट्स ऑल अबाउट ऑयल. इट इज नॉट मेरली अबाउट ऑयल. सो though definitely oil continues to be the mainstay of the relationship. So you can write down that in terms of challenges, that the ongoing rivalries between the key regional players the ongoing what? Rivalries between whom? The key regional players such as between the key regional players such as Saudi Arabia and Iran, Iran and Israel, and Israel, Saudi Arabia complicate India's engagements with the key or engagement with its West Asian neighbors. And by the way, as far as Iran-Israel rivalry goes, it's a pretty serious one. Okay, in the sense that Israel and Iran both have been known to issue strong statements against each other. Iran says that Israel does not have a right to exist as a state itself. Iran and Iran sponsored Iran supported militant attacks have been carried out by the Hezbollah, which is a militant group based out of Lebanon. Lebanon is north of Israel, and militant groups in Lebanon, like the Hezbollah, have been provided funding and arms by whom? Iran. Also, if you probably would have read, Israel has been accused of launching cyber attacks on Iran, including on Iran's nuclear installations in the past, like the Stuxnet virus, etc. ये कुछ साल पहले की बात है. Also, one of Iran's top military commanders, who was on a visit to Iraq, was assassinated, and probably had the role of Israeli intelligence forces like Mossad, etc. also within it. So the Iran-Israel rivalry is also a very serious rivalry, partly owing from the fact also that Israel has good relations with whom? US. Okay. So basically, so thus close relations with Iran is something that creates tensions in the India-US relationship, but can also create tension in the India-Israel relationship. So the ongoing rivalry complicates India's engagement with its West Asian neighbors, while India has constantly sought to emphasize that it views its relationship with each of the West Asian partners that is Israel, Iran, and Saudi Arabia as independent of each other, while India has constantly sought to emphasize that it views its relationship with each of the West Asian partners, that is Israel, Iran, and Saudi Arabia, as independent of each other. Any major tilt towards either of the players is likely to antagonize others. Thus, engaging West Asia, West Asian partners is a difficult balancing act, for न्यू दिल्ली. ठीक है. देखिए, अच्छा एक चीज मेरे को बताइए, अभी तक सिंस द क्लासेस ऑफ आईआर दैट वी हैव हैड एंड मैम हैज नाउ डन विथ यू, नाउ व्हेन यू रीड एनीथिंग इन द न्यूज़पेपर्स, आई होप देन इट मेक्स एम्पल सेंस. अब उसमें आपको कोई ऐसा अरे यार इसमें से क्या पढ़ना है क्या छोड़ना है. सी दिस इज द थिंग, व्हेन वी रीड एनी टॉपिक इन द बिगनिंग, तो हमको लगता है कि इसमें क्या इंपॉर्टेंट है, क्या रेलिवेंट है, हाउ टू अप्रोच द टॉपिक. बट वंस यू आर डन देन, अब इसके बाद लेट मी अश्योर यू, अगले 1 2 3 साल में कुछ खास बड़ा धमाका नहीं होने वाला है. वो तो आप लकी थे कि आपने अपने सामने क्या यूक्रेन वॉर देख, लकी थे कि अनलकी ये समय बताएगा, पर कुछ तो थे यार, है ना. लड़ाई का इंतजार बहुत समय से था, है ना. तो दैट इज देयर. नाउ यही एक चीज है कि इसलिए as I was saying in the beginning also, and this applies to almost every topic, चाहे हिस्ट्री है, चाहे पॉलिटी है, चाहे इकोनॉमिक्स है. once you have done the basics of it, it's unlikely that something substantial is going to change एकदम से. तो जो हाइप और ये सब बनता है ना कि कहाँ से पढ़ना है, क्या क्या, कुछ भी नहीं है. एनी वन डिसेंटली गुड सोर्स is kind of enough. Now, Okay, now let's go ahead. And the second point was here that the US sanctions, USA's sanctions over Iran since the early 2000s have prevented the India-Iran relationship from realizing its true potential. Further, given the strategic significance of Iran for India's engagement in given the strategic significance of Iran for India's engagement where? In Afghanistan and Central Asia, it is important to address this significant or address this key challenge of US sanctions. Further, as the US sanctions were reimposed in 2017, ठीक है, हम ईरान के बारे में थोड़ी सी बात करेंगे अलग से. देन देखिए एकदम सिंपल है, मैं आपको ऐसे बता दूं कि 2005 के बाद आफ्टर 2005 USA imposed sanctions on Iran because USA said Iran is making nuclear weapons. Most Indians, including me, believed for a long time that Iran is actually making nuclear weapons. The fact of the matter is Iran is not making nuclear weapons. ये मेरा व्यू पॉइंट नहीं है. India's head of the Department of Disarmament within the Ministry of External Affairs, who founded the Department of Disarmament, who writes in the Hindu also, Rakesh Sood, he has said many a times that Iran is not actually making nuclear weapons. However, it is keeping the option open. Because it is keeping the option open, though it is not making nuclear weapons. Israel has nuclear weapons? Yes or no? Israel says we don't know whether we have nuclear weapons or not. They call it nuclear ambiguity. But it is an accepted fact that Israel has nuclear weapons. Israel does not want Iran to have nuclear weapons. Now, in the meanwhile, who went ahead and actually now has nuclear weapons? North Korea. And North Korea has nuclear weapons. Who gave up nuclear weapons? Ukraine, South Africa, two countries. So many a number of times, some of these countries which had nuclear weapons have given up, and if only Ukraine would have had nuclear weapons, war would have looked a bit more different. Okay, some of you may say, oh, if Ukraine would have had nuclear weapon, then there would not have been a war. ऐसा तो कुछ नहीं है, ठीक है. But that's another debate. However, long and short of this is this, that USA said that Iran is developing nuclear weapons, and so we want to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons, and the International Atomic Energy Agency said that Iran can develop nuclear weapons. USA said we are imposing sanctions in 2005. Obama in 2012 said, let's have a deal with Iran, and if Iran agrees to stop processing uranium or creating enriched uranium, then we can enter into a deal. Iran should stop enriching uranium and we will lift up the sanctions. ये 2012 में who said? Obama. So by 2014 a deal was signed and the US sanctions were slowly being lifted. When? After 2014. But 2017 इस टाइम तक कौन था? Obama. Up till 2016. After 2017 बड़े महानुभाव Trump is like नहीं. They will not give up nuclear weapons. They will develop it later. They are anyways developing the missiles. So they will not give up the nuclear weapon option. And so we should reimpose sanctions and sign a better deal. He said Obama had signed a foolish deal with Iran. I will sign a better deal and reimpose the sanctions in 2017. As they reimpose the sanctions, the deal went off, and since then Trump is gone and Biden has also been unable to sign a new deal. Okay, ऐसा नॉर्मली होता नहीं है कि कंट्री ये डील साइन करे फिर नया आए प्राइम मिनिस्टर और प्रेसिडेंट एंड रिवोक्स द ओल्ड डील सेइंग कि वो पिछले वाले ने सही नहीं किया फिर से करते. बट so it's been a long mess, and because of this reimposition of sanctions, India's oil imports again declined, and you see as the US sanctions were reimposed in 2017 and India, देखिए जब sanctions lift हुए तो India again started buying oil from whom? Iran. But again sanctions were imposed and again we have drastically reduced. ये और रह गया है कि एक तरफ इंडिया खरीदे रशिया से एंड द नेक्स्ट साइड इंडिया बाइज फ्रॉम ईरान. ईरान ऑयल भी बहुत चीप में मिल जाएगा. ये वैसे बहुत स्मगलिंग होती है ईरानियन ऑयल की भी इंडिया में, तो ये बात पता नहीं है. ये बहुत होशियार है ईरान वाले भी ना. देखिए होशियार लोग दुनिया में हर जगह. ईरानियन ऑयल टैंकर्स गो टू द कोस्ट ऑफ ओमान और वहां वो ईरानियन ऑयल दूसरे टैंकर्स में डाल के इंडिया में बेच देते. वो भी बहुत होशियार. ठीक है, आप हर जगह जहां धंधा हो सकता है वहां लोग धंधा कर रहे हैं. ठीक है, धंधे से बड़ा कोई धर्म. तो वो हो रहा है. देयर इज अ लॉट ऑफ ब्लैक स्मगलिंग ऑफ इरानियन ऑयल दैट ईरान डेलिबरेटली डज बिकॉज इट हेल्प्स देम सेल देयर ऑयल. बट ठीक है, वो इतनी कॉम्प्लेक्सिटी जरूरत नहीं है. जैसे मैं आपको बता रहा हूं, रशिया यूएसए स्टॉप सेलिंग मेडिकल इक्विपमेंट्स टू रशिया आफ्टर द यूएस सैंक्शंस. दिस इज नॉट नाउ यूएस कंपनीज आर नॉट सेलिंग मेडिकल इक्विपमेंट्स टू रशिया लाइक एमआरआई मशीन, सीटी स्कैन, ये अल्ट्रासाउंड. तो क्या हो रहा है? हाँ मैन, Indians buy machines from USA, then sell it to आपदा में अवसर. तो ये अपना एक अलग ब्रांड है ना। तो ये सब करते हैं, हम भी कर रहे हैं इसमें, और वो कुछ नहीं है। सो अभी आजकल कुछ ये भी चल रहा है क्या, कुछ डी डॉलराइजेशन और ये सारी बातें, तो वो तो मैंने भी नहीं पढ़ा, अभी जब मैं पढ़ूंगा तो पढ़ा। Further, as the US sanctions were imposed in 2017 and India again reduced its oil imports from Iran, China, or reduced oil imports from Iran. In contrast, China has stepped up its engagement with Iran despite US sanctions. Including the purchase of Iranian oil. And by 2021, by 2021, China and Iran have entered into a 400 billion US dollar strategic partnership for Chinese investments in infrastructure, port and oil and gas sector. Where? In ईरान। वो जो चबहार पोर्ट था जो हमें बनाना है, उसमें भी चाइनीज आर नाउ एंटरिंग इनटू दैट आल्सो। सो व्हिच इज समथिंग दैट इंडिया इज पार्टली लैगिंग बिहाइंड in terms of engaging Iran, and that is partly because of the US sanctions. So that is there. Now I hope that this much is clear. These are the key challenges of the India-Iran, of the India-West Asia relationship. Now, what is about the way forward? देखिए, कोई खास वे फॉरवर्ड है नहीं, है ना। वे फॉरवर्ड तभी होगा जब पहली बात यूएस के सैंक्शंस विल गो अवे, दैट्स वन। And to that extent, there is one more development, and that is what the Abraham Accords, and how has that influenced. So we'll talk about that also. देखिए, let me throw this slide here. देखिए, what is this Abraham Accords? The Jews and Muslims, they are both sons of Abraham. Abraham Accords. ठीक है, मैं ये पॉइंट यहां से थोड़ा सा बता दूं. If you go back to these rivalries, I said, right? If you go back to these rivalries between Israel, Saudi Arabia, Iran, etc., UAE has good relations with whom? Saudi Arabia, and it is UAE who as prompted by Trump administration entered into an accord with Israel, where they said that they will established diplomatic relations with Israel, allowing Israeli government to open its embassy in UAE, starting direct flights between Israel and UAE. Soon thereafter, Sudan, Morocco, they also engaged in a similar engagement or entered into a similar engagement with whom? Israel. Saudi Arabia has not entered into any such agreement with Israel. There are no direct flights connecting Saudi Arabia to Israel, etc. But those between UAE and Israel have already started. But it is a well accepted fact. It is a well or accepted, if not fact, it is a well accepted statement that while this proximity between Israel and UAE was supported by whom? USA. It also had the indirect blessings of Saudi Arabia, because UAE would not enter into such a engagement with whom? Israel, without the approval of Saudi Arabia. And thus this pointed towards lowering of tensions between whom? Between Israel and the key powerful players of West Asia like Saudi Arabia and UAE. All of them, what is common between all of them is that they have good relations with whom? And they have rivalry with whom? Iran. So while the entering of Abraham Accord has it sharpened rivalries or has it blunted the rivalries? Both. It has blunted the rivalries between Israel and Saudi Arabia, which is good news for whom? India. Because now we can deeply engage Saudi Arabia and Israel as they themselves have shown the willingness to engage each other. But it has further isolated whom? Iran, making it difficult for India to engage Iran. देखिए अब ये सब कॉम्प्लेक्सिटी है. इसी के बीच में एक आर्टिकल आया था 2021 में. आई एम ऑलरेडी स्टार्टेड मिसिंग लॉकडाउन. मेरे को लग रहा है कि ये रोज रोज आके पढ़ाना थोड़ा सा मुश्किल काम है. देखिए मैं आई टेल यू, आई हैड अ स्टूडियो घर पे ही ऊपर ना, एक रूम ऊपर, वहां पे स्टूडियो, नीचे घर. आई वुड वॉच नेटफ्लिक्स, ऑर्डर फूड फ्रॉम बिग चिल्स, खा पी के अब जाके पढ़ा के वापस नीचे आके सो जा. अब नाउ इज लाइक कम हेयर, टी, सिट द होल डे. टू मच वर्क. होप्स आर देयर ऑन द नेक्स्ट वेरिएंट. कुछ 10-15 दिन का. नाउ coming back here, in 2021 there was something that was announced, Quad 2.0. आपने पढ़ा होगा, हो सकता है ये नाम सुनाओ, या इसको कहा गया था वेस्ट एशियन क्वाड. वेस्ट एशियन क्वाड. तो इस वेस्ट एशियन क्वाड के 4 पोटेंशियल पार्टनर्स वर इजराइल, UAE, India, and whom? USA, not Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia does not openly acknowledge entering into relations with whom? Israel, because of the Palestinian question. Okay, though it is known that both of them talk to each other very commonly. There was one individual known as Julian Assange. अब आप लोग हो सकता है भूल गए हो, लेकिन Assange was one figure who leaked what were called as the WikiLeaks paper. And in these WikiLeaks paper, there is ample evidence that Israel and Saudi Arabia have been talking to each other secretly for a while now. In one of these papers, the Saudi Arabia's foreign ministry, Saudi's one of foreign ministers is writing to whom? Israel, saying that we should work together to chop off the head of the snake. Who's the snake? Iran. ठीक, तो कौन किसका दोस्त है, ये सब बहुत, क्या ऊपर दिख रहा है अंदर क्या है वो बात अलग है. So basically the idea of Quad 2.0 was to bring what? What does UAE have? A sovereign wealth fund of more than 600 billion US dollars, which is a fund that they have made only to invest in manufacturing in other manufacturing sector or in other sectors in other countries. So UAE has surplus fund. ठीक है. Israel has technology. India has the space to provide an opportunity for UAE fund to work with Israeli companies to make in India. सुनने में बहुत अच्छा लगता है. ठीक है, तो ये सब सुनने का ही है कुछ, और आंसर में लिखने के लिए भी है. प्रैक्टिकली में कुछ नहीं होने वाला है ना. यू वांट यूएई मनी बट यू डोंट वांट देम. हु आर देम? है ना, द वन. तो पैसा दे दो, है ना, कुछ नहीं होने वाला है. लेकिन लिखने के लिए क्वाड 2.0 इज द फ्यूचर ऑफ इंडिया वेस्ट एशिया relationship. ठीक है. So it is clear that partly there is merit to the statement that India views West Asia from the prism of India-US relationship, partly, but it may not remain the same. ये inevitable नहीं है कि इंडिया सुनता रहेगा यूएस की, as has been demonstrated in case of Russia. Push comes to shove, India feels that its core interests are being violated. India may dump US. है ना. ये ऐसा नहीं है कि ये नहीं हो सकता. ठीक है, हो सकता है, irrespective of whatever is said. Okay. So India is no pushover. While India may seek to engage closely with USA for the foreseeable future. If China is taken out of the picture, then देखिए इन सब में एक बड़ा ड्राइवर चाइना भी है. If only China's challenge is managed, India's engagement with everybody else will look very different. Okay. So that's there. तो the way forward के लिखने के लिए क्वाड 2.0 उन्होंने हमारे लिए दिया. बाकी और प्रैक्टिकल अगर दुनिया में आप बात करेंगे तो कुछ नहीं होने वाला है. क्वाड 2.0 mind you, but that doesn't mean that UAE is not going to invest in India. Jammu and Kashmir, they have amply announced they'll put in the money there. UAE can put in the money in other sectors in India as well, but it would be sufficient to say if there is lack of political or social stability in India, no investments are going to come in the long term, more so from so-called Muslim nations. है ना. ऐसा थोड़ी पैसा देते रहेंगे और आप यहाँ पार्टी चल रही है बुलडोजर लेके इधर उधर उधर हर जगह, है ना, इंक्रोचमेंट हटाना है ना. मैं नहीं बोल रहा हूं ऐसा. आपका बुलडोजर आपकी कंट्री जहां जाना है वहां चलाओ. आई फुली सपोर्ट बुलडोजर, है ना. मैं जिस घर में रह रहा हूं उस पर भी चला दो. वो मेरा वैसे भी है नहीं, किराए पर है. Now, so in terms of way forward, you can write down that in terms of way forward, you can write down that firstly, the proposal of Quad 2.0, which seeks to bring closer economic cooperation between whom? Between India, USA, UAE, and Israel has been, or the proposal of Quad 2.0, which seeks to bring closer economic cooperation between India, USA, UAE, and Israel, is worthy of being implemented in the backdrop of the Abraham Accords, in the backdrop of the Abraham Accords, in the backdrop of the Abraham Accords, which sought to normalize relations between Israel and other West Asian in the backdrop of Abraham Accords, which sought to normalize relations between Israel and other West Asian countries. The idea of Quad 2.0 to utilize Israeli technology, UAE's capital or fund, and India as a potential manufacturing base. A positive vision for the future has been proposed. It's time to implement the same. And that's one point as a way forward. The second point ऐसे लिखते ना वो जॉइंट स्टेटमेंट में ये कर देंगे, वो कर देंगे, ये बन जाएगा, वो बन जाएगा, इसके ऊपर ये भी बन, ये रेलवेज का भी प्रपोजल है यहाँ क्वाड 2.0 के अंदर। एक सऊदी अरेबिया से रेल लाइन बनाएंगे which is actually a doable proposal stretching across Saudi Arabia and UAE, connecting all the way to Israel, a rail line. It can be done very easily and very quickly, but फिर सबको प्रॉब्लम हो जाएगा। हाँ? तो वो इसलिए बने नहीं बने, लेकिन इट्स पॉसिबल नाउ। एंड द सेकंड पॉइंट ऑन द वे फॉरवर्ड दैट यू कैन राइट, देखिए वैसे तो सऊदी इन्वेस्टमेंट्स इन इंडिया is a very real possibility and technically very strongly possible. The potential of this was seen in COVID, when Saudi Arabia's biggest oil company, Aramco, entered into a joint venture in Reliance. And Aramco bought shares of Reliance, God knows for how many billion dollars. 25-30 billion US dollars. देखिए, during COVID, this deal was announced, Aramco and Reliance deal. Though this deal fell apart a year later, but it was announced. And in one stroke, Reliance shares went up by 40% in 2 days. Okay. एक महीने में रिलायंस ने 2 डील अनाउंस की, एक अरमैको के साथ, सऊदी अरेबिया, द वर्ल्ड्स बिगेस्ट ऑयल प्रोड्यूसर्स, Reliance, the world's biggest oil refiners. Please understand, most of these West Asian countries do not have oil refining capacities, whereas in India we have huge oil refining capacities. So there is a natural convergence there. Saudi and Iranian oil is processed in Indian refineries to produce Hindu-Muslim unity. So basically, however, though this deal was announced and it was signed, eventually it fell apart. That's another thing. But the share prices went through the roof because this was coming together of two of the world's biggest companies which work in the oil sector. So the potential is huge. एक बार हो गई फेल तो फिर भी हो सकती है. And this deal can be signed in the future. The second deal that Reliance entered in a quick succession of the Aramco deal during COVID was with whom? Was with, I think, with Facebook. Reliance entered into a deal with Facebook and Zuckerberg invested into Reliance, और ये 5G और सब में कुछ कुछ आगे लोग करेंगे साथ में, whatever it is. In one stroke, or in these 2 strokes, Reliance had a debt of 1 lakh crore rupees. कितने जीरो लग रहे हैं वो गिन लीजिए. And in 1 month, it wiped out its own debt completely by giving certain stake to Facebook and some to Aramco. And Reliance का share went up 40%. मतलब आपने अगर 1 करोड़ रुपए के शेयर खरीदे होते तो 1 महीने बाद वो 1 करोड़ 40 लाख के हो जाते और आप चिल करते. तो 1 करोड़ रुपए पहली बात तो आपके पास है नहीं, है ना. आपके पास क्या है? 10,000 रुपए. फिर आप उसको अपना जीरोधा या ग्रो या 2-4 और ऐप में खोलते और लगाते, फिर उस पर 40% जुड़ भी गया तो कितना होगा? 14,000. कुछ नहीं मिलने वाला है आपको. मत खेलिए वो गेम जो आप के लिए है ही नहीं. ठीक है, तो ये गेम वही लोग खेलते हैं जिनके पास इतना बेयर मिनिमम है, और कभी ऊपर चला गया तो कभी नीचे भी चला गया तो कोई फर्क नहीं है. देखिए कोविड में मैंने एक शेयर खरीदा था, ठीक है, ऐसे गेम में. That was ITC, है ना. ITC today has given me 60% return. मैंने भी बहुत ज्यादा नहीं, गरीब आपके पास 10,000 थे, मेरे पास 1.5 लाख रुपए थे, बट स्टिल इट गेव मी सम 60-70,000 रुपीज, है ना. तो वो आप, ये गेम उन्हीं का है जिनके पास बहुत पैसे हैं, वरना आप ये चिड़ी विड़ी लेके मेरे में लगाना 1000 कुछ कोई रेलेवेंस नहीं है. ठीक है. सो राइट डाउन, नो, पीपल हु कैन अंडरस्टैंड द मैक्रो इकोनॉमिक पिक्चर can even look at the global trends and you know what is broadly understood, they can make money. You and us, this is not meant for us. मत अपने माँ बाप का मेहनत का पैसा इन चीजों में लगाइए, चुपचाप 4% एफडी में लीजिए, 8% इन्फ्लेशन में दीजिए, ठीक है, और बैठे रहिए, ठीक है। जो आप लोगों को बताया ना म्यूचुअल फंड में 12% मिलेगा, इन्फ्लेशन तो 6% खा ही जाता है और फिर आपके पास 6 कुछ नहीं बचेगा। वन मोर वॉर, यू डोंट नो व्हाट इज गोइंग वेयर, ठीक है। सो मत करिए ये सब काम। चलिए नाउ second, just the point, India must continue to seek a closer engagement with whom? Iran. India must continue to seek a closer engagement with Iran and must continue to resist and must continue to resist a complete rupture of its trade and economic relationship with Iran, given the strategic importance of the same. तो ये है किस चीज पे? अबाउट लुक वेस्ट पॉलिसी, द इंपॉर्टेंस, द चैलेंजेस एंड द वे फॉरवर्ड. India must continue to seek a closer engagement with Iran and must continue to resist a complete rupture of its trade and economic relationships with Iran, given the strategic importance of the same or of the relation. ठीक है. So that is all that you need to know about what the look west policy. I'll give you a handout on the same, जिस पे थोड़ा बहुत और इजराइल के बारे में भी रहेगा. इजराइल का इंपॉर्टेंस इज ऑफ डिफेंस, मिलिट्री एंड सिक्योरिटी कोऑपरेशन एंड थोड़ा बहुत इन एरियाज लाइक एग्रीकल्चर, बिकॉज इजराइल हैज डन एक्सेप्शनली वेल इन एग्रीकल्चर, इन ड्राई लैंड एग्रीकल्चर and in drip irrigation systems, or in ensuring agriculture in the dry and arid regions of Israel. Israel has managed to ensure a flourishing of agriculture. So partly learning from their water conservation techniques, especially in the area of agriculture. तो कुछ areas of cooperation वो हैं defense and security and technology cooperation और Pegasus. ऐसे नहीं लिखना Pegasus. इंडियन को क्या फर्क पड़ता है पेगासस वेगासस, जो है देख लो, हम डरते हैं क्या, वो एक अलग चीज. बट दिस इज अबाउट इंडिया वेस्ट एशिया रिलेशनशिप. नाउ कमिंग टू वेयर इंडियन डायस्पोरा. आई होप दिस मच इज क्लियर, राइट. तो डायस्पोरा, देखिए क्वेश्चंस कहां से आते हैं डायस्पोरा में. मोस्टली 2-3 तरह के क्वेश्चंस बन सकते हैं डायस्पोरा में. वन, एक जनरल क्वेश्चन, डिस्कस द सिग्निफिकेंस ऑफ इंडियन डायस्पोरा. टू, और डिस्कस द सिग्निफिकेंस ऑफ इंडियन डायस्पोरा, टू व्हाट एक्सटेंट इट कैन कंट्रीब्यूट टू इंडियाज इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ. डायस्पोरा पे ऐसे टॉपिक भी आ सकता है, ठीक है, क्योंकि डायस्पोरा सम में से इज ब्रेन ड्रेन, others may say no bhai, it is not brain drain and all of that. So even that can be one thing. तो एक तो जनरल क्वेश्चन आ सकता है अबाउट डायस्पोरा एंड इट्स सिग्निफिकेंस. द अदर क्वेश्चन कैन बी अबाउट डायस्पोरा जो आए हुए हैं, जैसे इसमें क्वेश्चन आया हुआ है डायस्पोरा एंड इट्स सिग्निफिकेंस. एक बार क्वेश्चन आया था सिग्निफिकेंस ऑफ इंडियन डायस्पोरा टू significance of Indian diaspora specifically in the light of Southeast Asia. एक बार क्वेश्चन आया हुआ है डायस्पोरा एंड इट्स सिग्निफिकेंस इन द कॉन्टेक्स्ट ऑफ नॉर्थ अमेरिका. तो आपको ये ब्रॉड डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन पता होना चाहिए इंडियन डायस्पोरा का इन डिफरेंट रीजन्स एंड व्हाट इज इट्स सिग्निफिकेंस टू इंडियाज रिलेशनशिप. ये इज वन थिंग दैट यू नीड टू नो. तो diaspora, what is its significance and what are the key challenges that need to be addressed and a way forward. At a general level, this, and more particularly North America, West Asia, हैं तो और भी एरियाज, साउथ ईस्ट एशिया पार्टली एंड अफ्रीका. अरे दुनिया में जितनी कंट्रीज है वहां हम हैं, है ना. देयर इज अ सर्टेन सेंस ऑफ आयरनी टू दिस. इंडियन लाइक आए भारत में सब बांग्लादेशी घुसा है. हाँ, out of 197 198 countries, Indians are there in more than 190 countries. कहां हम घुस के गए, कहां न्योता आया था, है ना, वो अलग बात है. ठीक है. नाउ नॉर्थ अमेरिका, वेस्ट एशिया एंड साउथ ईस्ट एशिया, अफ्रीका. अब when we talk about, so one is a broad overall understanding and the other is at the specific regional levels. These are the two things that you need to know. देखिए, firstly, how does diaspora and what is the significance of diaspora? One thing is remittance. Diaspora is equal to remittance. Second thing is diaspora, and if I was to give the example of North America, and we'll take concrete examples, diaspora is something which can strengthen what? The government to government relationship. A strong diaspora can strengthen the government to government relationship. For example, a strong Indian diaspora is there where? USA. And it has strengthened India's, the government to government relationship between whom? India and USA. For example, how? Indians who are in USA, for example, who are working in US companies also. Okay, जैसे कौन? पिचाई, सुंदर पिचाई. वो दूसरा कौन? तो सब चल रहा, वो गूगल, माइक्रोसॉफ्ट, ट्विटर, जो भी. हाँ, बड़े बड़े लोग, गूगल वाले, माइक्रोसॉफ्ट वाले और फेसबुक वाले, नहीं, ट्विटर वाले, पराग अग्रवाल, जो भी बड़े लोग. तो फर्स्टली व्हेन पीपल फ्रॉम इंडियन ओरिजिन और इंडियन डायस्पोरा, व्हेन दे गो ऑन टू हेड अ नंबर ऑफ American IT companies, they are going to bring investments where? To India. Okay. Apart from the fact that obviously India has a ready pool of IT engineers to be recruited, etc., you see all of them have opened up major offices where? In India. Google has a major office in Hyderabad, right? So is Microsoft, etc. So firstly, many of this diaspora is going to firstly bring investments into India. Many of these diaspora members are also going to be strong votaries of India-US relationship. Example, there is USIBC. USIBC is a group which involves the top CEOs of Indian and US companies. This is US India Business Council. ठीक है. They have always been in favor of deepening economic engagements between whom? India and USA. ठीक है. Meaning entering into more commercial arrangements with Indian companies and vice versa. Secondly, the same US India Business Council also played an important role in supporting the India US civil nuclear deal. So even supporting government level agreements is often done through lobby groups like the US India Business Council, okay, which involves large number of members of the Indian diaspora. ठीक है, ये बड़ी सिंपल सी बात है ना. सुंदर पिचाई और सत्या नडेला's parents stay in India, and they know India also has a ready pool of engineers to recruit from. They'll recruit from here. They'll have an inclination towards India. So whether it is in terms of giving a boost to government cooperation or bringing investments to India, many of these people of the Indian diaspora can have a positive role to play. So remittances तो ठीक है, but apart from remittances, also in terms of investments and thus what? Jobs. You see, a positive role can be played by whom? The diaspora. अभी ऑस्ट्रेलिया चल रहा है, इंडिया ऑस्ट्रेलिया कुछ FTA and all that, right? What does that signify? Part of that FTA is also going to be made possible by whom? The Indian diaspora. There is a significant Indian diaspora in Sydney, in Canberra, and in many other areas in Australia. So firstly, that is one potential significance. The flip side of it, when you go also obviously to West Asia की बात तो हमने अभी करी है, so we don't need to what? Repeat on West Asia. The flip side of this is also what? That ensuring the safety of Indian diaspora is going to be a what? Major objective and concern of whom? The Indian foreign policy. Ukraine, rescue Indian students from Ukraine, etc. That's one. A Indian student studying in China, China is like nahi chahiye ab Indian student. So ensuring the safety, survival and livelihood of Indian diaspora, whether it is in West Asia or it is in a Ukraine or it is in a China, or you may have read ki in Australia also there have been racist attacks against Indians in the past. So ensuring the safety of this Indian diaspora, which is working abroad in many other countries, is also a Herculean challenge and a primary concern for Indian policy makers. Another objective also is what? To make it easy for Indian diaspora to maintain links with whom? India. कैसे? देखिए, can firstly NRI buy property in India? पहली बात, who is NRI? अच्छा चलिए ऐसे चालू कर. Can NRIs buy property in India? NRI cannot buy agricultural land, or can they? They cannot buy agricultural land. Decide कर लेते हैं आज एक बार में. They can or they cannot. Who is NRI? पहली बात, NRI is a Indian citizen or not? है? ये इसी बात से डिसाइड हो जाएगा. इंडियन सिटीजन है कि नहीं है? तो सिटीजन अपने देश में नहीं जमीन खरीद पाएगा तो कहां खरीदे? पाकिस्तान में. NRIs can buy property including land, including agricultural land in India. Who is NRI? Any Indian citizen who lives for more than 180 days outside India in a year. 181 दिन हुआ तो आप हो गए NRI. 6 महीने से ज्यादा बाहर रहना है, बट यू हैव टू बी अ इंडियन सिटीजन. अब ये मर्ज हो गया PIO OCI. आर दे इंडियन सिटीजन? नो, दे आर नॉट इंडियन सिटीजन. पेरेंट्स रहे हो, कुछ हो, जो भी है, दे आर नॉट इंडियन सिटीजन, है ना. ये वो लोग हैं जैसे हम भारतीय मानते हैं, लेकिन वो जिनकी नोबेल प्राइज पे मिलने पे हमें खुशी होती है जितनी कि वो हमारे हैं, वैसा ऐसा कोई जरूरी हो, जरूरी नहीं. PIOs, OCIs are not what? Indian citizens. Can they buy property in India? No. I said the objective of engaging the Indian diaspora is that we want to make it easier for them to do what? Invest in India. They can buy property in India, but not what? Not agricultural land. So real estate, vested, they can purchase. They want to open industry in India, they can do. उस इंडस्ट्री के लिए उनको लैंड खरीदना है इंडिया में, दे कैन परचेज. वी वांट टू मेक इट इजियर फॉर पीपल ऑफ इंडियन ओरिजिन टू कम बैक टू इंडिया एंड इन्वेस्ट इन इंडिया. ठीक है. ये जो ये 5-5 करोड़ के फ्लैट बन रहे हैं, ये आप खरीदेंगे क्या? ये आपके लिए है क्या? नहीं. जो डॉलर में कमा रहा है ये उन्हीं के लिए, तो आपके लिए नहीं है ना. फ्लैट स्टार्टिंग फ्रॉम 5 करोड़ ओनली. देखिए यहाँ एक कॉलोनी है दिल्ली, मैंने कल परसों न्यूज़ में देखा, मैं हंस हंस के एकदम पागल हो गया टाइप. दिल्ली एक DLF की कॉलोनी है यहाँ पे मोती बाग में, है ना. वहां उस पर न्यूज़पेपर में ऐड आया स्टार्टिंग फ्रॉम 5 करोड़ ओनली. वो मोती बाग कॉलोनी विच इज एपरेंटली ऑफ DLF, उसके पीछे बहुत बड़ा नाला है. नाले के ऊपर रहने के भी 5 करोड़ है इस देश में. विकास कितना हो गया आप समझ लीजिए. सो बेसिकली बट लोग, so one of the things is this, that you want to encourage investors of Indian origin to come back to India and invest in India, which will boost economic growth, and that is why PIOs and OCIs are allowed to invest in India. This is in keeping in line with what? That those Indians who made their fortunes outside, they come back to India and continue to engage India in one form or the other. Even if they don't become Indian citizens, even while they may live wherever they live, but they do business in India. Like some Indian film stars, रहते वो यही हैं, पिक्चर भी यही बनाते हैं, बिजनेस भी यही करते हैं, whatever. So that is there. So this is another objective of what? And it is a laudable objective. Jokes apart, it is a right thing to do. Though one may still impose limitations, like it is on agricultural land. They can't buy agricultural land in India. Okay. So this is about what? One aspect of engaging the diaspora. Another objective is to how to engage them to boost India's economic growth. There are other aspects also about technology transfer and all those things. When they come up and set up industries in India, they will impart skills and technology to locals as well. So that's also a potential area of cooperation. देखिए कई IITs हैं इंडिया में जहां पे, फॉर एग्जांपल इन IIT दिल्ली देयर इज सबीर भाटिया, द फाउंडर ऑफ हॉटमेल, जो हॉट पहले जीमेल और याहू के पहले एक मेल था हॉटमेल. सबीर भाटिया, द फाउंडर ऑफ हॉटमेल, हैज opened a lab in IIT Delhi and provided funding for it. Okay, which is for the IT sector in IIT Delhi. Similarly, different alumni of the IITs, etc., have provided funds for setting up infrastructure or innovation labs in many of IITs or higher education institutions in India. So again, the possibility of bringing them back and engaging them and transferring knowledge, skills, technology and capital to India is there. The idea that the Indian people who go and work abroad contributes to brain drain from India is a dated concept now. It is an outdated concept. It is considered that those Indians who go abroad also, they can continue to engage with India. They can continue to contribute to India's growth story, and the government must make it easier for them to engage India and contribute to India's growth story. That is why who is important? Diaspora. ठीक है, तो डायस्पोरा वो सब कुछ कर सकता है that the government also wants to do. It can help in economic growth, it can help in generating employment, it can help in transferring technology, it can help in building a manufacturing base in India. It sends back remittances. इसीलिए सिलेबस में वो लाइन लिखी है, क्या? द रोल ऑफ डायस्पोरा. आप समझ गए ना? बस ठीक. तो we'll stop here for today, and in the next lecture I'll just give you some of the other details, और देखते हैं और जो टाइम होगा उसमें we'll see what has to be done.